Marvel Rivals will never be a casual game, but why exactly do I say that? Well, I'm Coach Cuffy, a professional Overwatch coach, and I have been for around 4 years now. But today, that's not me. Today, I'm Charles Darwin, just the esports version. And in this video, you're about to witness me correctly predict the evolution of a game that's only been out for a couple of weeks now. So have your drinks, eat your popcorn, because we are about to start at the very beginning of the Rivals lifespan. I've done something very devious, and I know what you're thinking. Rivals did not come out in 2007. Well, rule number 1 to this journey that we're about to have today is never doubt a word that I say. I said as of this recording, Marvel Rivals has been out for a couple of weeks now. But I never, not once did I say that the start of Marvel Rivals was a couple of weeks ago. And this is a quick little disclaimer for the whiny little yappers in my comments. I know that TF2 wasn't the first ever hero shooter, tactical shooter, or whatever you want to call it. The only thing I'm claiming is, if you ask 100 people who are genuinely fans of tag shooters as a genre, the overwhelming majority of them will pay respects to TF2 as the first game changer in the lifespan. The first positive turning point in the genre. Wait, did I even explain what TF2 was? Because I just realized 2007 was almost 18 years ago. I was only a 5-year-old kid back then, and although I did dabble in the game a tiny amount, I highly doubt that I experienced prime TF2. For those of you that don't know, TF2 or Team Fortress 2 is a first-person shooter game where you can play as many as 9 different roles. Each of these roles had different abilities, benefits, and quirky concepts that added depth and replayability to an otherwise easy to understand game. A lot of the games that existed before were single-player games where you could play as different heroes of different classes, but like I said, TF2 was an online multiplayer game where the characters had personalities, a video game trait that was almost exclusive to just single player games. But now that we can see the future, we know that all tactical shooters have followed this exact same formula. The quirky concepts, the quirky personalities, they have all been copied. But that doesn't just stop at design. One of the quirkiest things about the game was its plays. Now, I'd be lying if I said I believed these TF2 players knew what they were doing when it came to the future of their game. I genuinely believe that these players picked up the game for the only reason why you should pick up games. The fun elements. Dare I say, for a while it was a casual game. People wanted to play, have fun, learn a character well as seeing all the things that they could do alongside friends or maybe even random teammates. But you need to remember that this was still a game with 2 teams with an objective outside of getting immediate kill. Again, something that other games at the time was severely lacking. It is human nature to want to learn. It is human nature to want to compete. Players realized very quickly that in order to outthink an opponent, they actually had to think. And just like that, TF2 players made the most intense strides in comparison to any other game for creating a complex competitive esports scene purely around team play. Now, I'd like to use this opportunity to show off a graph that I made, completely based off of my own research, that teaches the general direction and evolution of games in this genre. As you can see, the first step is players learning their characters and getting very good at them. The second is players creating a job for their character and learning how to perform that in relation to their teammates. The third is people learning their teammates' jobs and understanding what to expect from the people around them. And I would say that this is the last of these simple things, the things that come very early in the game's timeline. Because when we look at phases 4 and 5, players actively look to limit test and make plays with the utility that they have. And yes, as you've seen, this is something that did happen at the start of TF2's lifespan, but this is something that is constantly being elevated. On top of phase 5, which is where people start working on the theory behind the game from outside of the game. Whether that's YouTubers with tips and trick videos, or professional coaches, or players that VOD review themselves. These are key moments in the evolution of any tactical shooter game. And yes, I am reiterating that this is completely based off of trends that I have picked up on, but I guess a sample size of just TF2 isn't big enough. And suddenly, we're in the spring of 2016. Almost 10 years have passed since the release of TF2. which meant that tactical shooters as a genre had almost a decade to evolve. Whether that's in reference to the year's worth of updates that TF2 received, or the brand new tac shooters that came out during this time, the genre did have a loyal fanbase, but it seemed to have an issue with none of the new titles being able to compete with TF2, and that was the case until Overwatch came out. I don't think I need to go into as much detail about Overwatch. I'd go as far as saying it made tactical shooters mainstream, but the thing that set it aside from even TF2 was that there was genuinely a character for everyone. And I'm not even talking about personalities, this is a perspective from a top 8 North American Overwatch coach. You could hit top 500 without being able to hit a shot. I know, I did it. You can hit top 500 without having a brain. I know, I've coached hundreds of players that have done it, and I think that this was extremely attractive to the TF2 community because look at how many pros transitioned over to the game. Now let's go back to the theory. What you're seeing right now is 2016 gameplay from Overwatch 1. Now, I remember when it was like this, but I know for a fact that most of you guys that picked up the game in Overwatch 2 had no idea about the dire state of the game. I want you to actually take a close look here. Yes, some things are more obvious than others, like the fact that you could pick multiple of the same hero, or the fact that there are 6 players on each team. But some things aren't as easily spotted by the naked eye. Look at the way that they're playing, either on their own, expecting to do something and immediately dying, or completely stationary, static, all bunched together. Why exactly is it like this? Well, going back to my theory on the natural progression of games, this was a state in Overwatch's lifespan where people were just getting to grips with the heroes that they were playing, as the more complex laws of the game had not yet been established. I think you can already tell what my opinion of 2016 Overwatch is, but surprisingly, the majority of people would argue that this era of Overwatch was far more enjoyable than a lot of eras that followed. Overwatch nowadays is quite well known for having an extremely intelligent competitive scene, but what most people don't realize is one of the first issues that Overwatch had was linked to that intelligent fanbase and an evolving identity. People started to understand the importance of certain roles and certain characters, which then led to a lack of necessity and increased frustration when people wanted to have fun. Sounds crazy, right? Earlier I said that the main point of video games is to have fun, but this has essentially always been Overwatch's main issue. The players who want to run it down as 6 Symmetras versus the players that want to play and develop standardized meta. And depending on which side of the debate you asked, you would receive very different answers about the true evil of Overwatch's fanbase. And I can't say for sure why the devs pushed Overwatch in a more competitive direction, probably because they saw opportunity for an internal league. Well, nah, I'm just playing. That is literally the only reason. My point is, at the start we were merely playing a game with pretty colors and cool characters to all of a sudden playing a 2-core split, Sig as the main anchor, Ball as the moving vertice, and a constant rotating backline that looks to set up triangles and diamonds around a kill box that is also constantly moving. Still following? Perfect, because this is where Marvel Rivals comes into play. Now, Marvel Rivals is a game that needs no introduction. For around a year now, people have been describing it as the Overwatch killer. But the games really kill each other off. Valorant failed to do it, so did Fortnite. And although these games are slightly different genres, it was always extremely unlikely that Rivals' popularity would match the likes of these titles. I was one of the lucky few that got invited to the alpha and the beta, and my opinions of Rivals it wasn't that polished. The optimization was just poor, so outside of the crazy character concepts, a lot about its longevity was up for debate. And I got even more scared when the full game dropped and I still had to cap my frames at 45. Okay, I admit, this might just be a PC diff, but that didn't stop the fact that the game was riddled with bugs. And regardless of these things, I forced myself to step into the game, and then another, and then another, and then another. And I realized, if I'm playing 30 matches in a day, maybe I'm not forcing myself to play the game. The game was fun, the game was disorganized, it was cluttered. I finally started to understand why people enjoyed 2016 Overwatch. And I can see it in real time. People are playing and people are learning. From the Jeff the Landshark ults to the Doctor Strange spawn TPs, you can already tell that there was a lot of opportunity to do just about everything. So then I asked myself, what actually makes Rivals so different? And it's honestly very hard to say. Firstly, I think they have crazy good devs. I don't really know what devs are meant to be like because Overwatch is not the best example. It's like they've fused all of the best parts of Overwatch and implemented it in their game, but also have extremely unique factors on top of this. I really like the fact that Marvel Rivals doesn't have roll-up, so we aren't limited to 2 characters of every role. A lot of people have been pushing for this, but I really think it limits the play potential more than anything. Yo, if they do eventually implement this, I'm gonna be annoyed because the Rivals devs have done this to themselves by adding such a stupid amount of duelists in comparison to other roles. On top of this, you hear a lot of talk about all the characters being overpowered, so they all feel good. And to be honest, I'm actually inclined to agree with this, and if anything, this really makes me feel like Paladins came out at the wrong time, because everything positive that applies to Rivals, low-key, very low-key, also applies to Paladins. But the clearest way that we can see good design or good balancing, but let's be real, it's not good balancing, is just based on how varied these top level tier lists actually are. A character like Wolverine comes to mind, everyone's putting him D or E or F tier. Yo, I get rolled by that guy. I get rolled by that guy like crazy. I have been rolled by that guy in organized play. But this is due to him dealing extra damage to targets with high health pools. The ultimate tank buster. And in my opinion, it's small things like that that give these characters more potential than Overwatch characters ever had. I describe this Wolverine ability as an innate and proactive passive ability. And don't get me wrong, Overwatch passives do have some form of depth to them, but think about Lucio. His passive is that he can wall ride. People like me kind of exploited that. Wall riding, in the minds of the devs, never looked like how we're using it. While these things will still be present in Marvel Rivals, I can already tell you with the rocket booster tech, for example. Or if we want to talk about it from a team play perspective, we use Brigitta's kit to peel for a second support. That is her function, that is something that we have come up with as players. The fact that the Marvel devs are literally spoon feeding us functions for characters means that we will have the elements Overwatch has, on top of having hero specific functions where we know the characters can also excel. But my teammates, this isn't just an assumption, this is provable. Who were the 2 characters I mentioned before? Jeff and Doctor Strange. Even the plays amongst these 2 characters have gotten more complicated. We've all seen the clip of a Jeff ulting an enemy Jeff's Jeff ult to save his own team from being spat off the map. That's insane. Not to mention the fact that we are now using Doctor Strange TPs to TP in front of enemy Doctor Strange TPs to bait their team to walking through the TP off the map because people stopped walking directly through TPs at spawn off the map. Can you believe that I just said that sentence in relation to a game that's less than a month old? We are probably at phase 4, which means we've reached another conclusion completely unrelated to my original hypothesis. Not only can we determine the success of Marvel Rivals through studying the evolution of past games, but we can also make the claim that we as players are also evolving. This graph was used to describe an entire lifespan of Team Fortress 2, yet can only describe the first month of Rivals. There's no time limit to any of these phases, but maybe in the future, we might just see more phases added on. I hope you guys enjoyed why I believe Marvel Rivals will never be a casual game, and I look forward to catching you in the next one.